Hi guys, how are you today? Yeah, sorry I was recording earlier and it didn't work out, so I don't know if you got any of that. But I really want to, this is part two. I want to talk about the review of the French Open, go a bit more in depth. I watched it again so I can really have a good chance to go point by point and get in depth in this thing, in this match, in this French Open final, right? But I'm not going to talk about every point. I'm just going to give you a sort of an analysis. But I'm doing it from a perspective of watching the second time just to go over the points and the tactics and to really get in-depth knowledge from not watching it from the entertainment the first time for the joy, but just to give you guys the in-depth. Like I just watched it a second time just for making the video and just looking at the tactics and what they were doing and the emotions and all those things. So I want to do that first, and I'm going to talk more about the goat debate, go a bit in depth, some things that I didn't really I didn't really talk about the previous time. So when it comes to this match, very interesting match, and what I really found about it was, what I found about this match was the fact that Nadal came out at a very high level. The court is very slow. It's autumn. It's October. Indoors, the humidity really builds, so it makes it slower. It makes it like basically you're playing on the slowest kind of clay court you could ever play with the cold, with the indoors and all of that. And then they're using the slowest ball. So clay, the slowest surface, slowest balls, indoors, humidity, slow it down, cold weather. So it basically created the slowest a clay court could be, but also the lowest bounce. So the slowness benefits Nadal, but the low bounce doesn't particularly. For Djokovic, he's happy that Nadal's top spin won't be getting as high, but then the slowness, it's not good for him. He'd rather be playing at Wimbledon or indoors. That would be his ideal. In fact, I would say Djokovic's ideal would be a grass court from the 90s, like Wimbledon, to beating Nadal, but unfortunately, that's not a reality anymore. So, so then that's the situation there. But let's talk about the facts and what happened, right? So when this match started, I just really felt like Djokovic tried to play his normal rally game. Because of the slowness of the court, he wasn't getting it past Nadal's defense. So as far as him when he's ahead of the point, he couldn't end it. And sometimes to try to end it, he had to go for too much and create errors, right? Then secondly, if he didn't try to go and he just try to sort of keep pushing and keep it in and be a bit more conservative and not hit too much and risk an error, what you'd find is Nadal would have time to give a high loopy ball deep that would be jumping up a bit, sort of hitting towards the Djokovic's baseline. That wasn't really an attackable ball for Novak. So he would put the ball in not very short, but just a bit short. And with the slowness of the court, it gives Nadal to run around and hit a forehand. Or if it's on the forehand side, just really set up. And that big swing on the forehand he really has a chance to set up. Then it's sort of the one and the two free forehands until he's ended the point. And he always had the thing is you need to take time away from Nadal. Slowest clay court, it's almost impossible unless you have extreme power. Djokovic didn't have it. So he's not able to end the point. Nadal continues to turn defense into attack. Once he hits the first forehand, it's another forehand, another one. Each forehand, he's pushing Djokovic back. He's getting more control until he just ends the point with a very easy forehand to an open court. Um, and the progression of every forehand that he's able to hit once he gets control, he knows is guaranteed he's going to win the point because every forehand he gets more control and the ball gets shorter and more easier to finish it off until it's over. So whenever he's in that position on the clay court, it doesn't matter how long the defense, it's a matter of how many forehands can you make him hit till he ends it. Very rarely he'll lose it. And as far as getting the ball faster through the court, so he's not going to be able to set up, you need to hit the ball hard. And like I said, the slowest possible court balls, wherever indoors, very difficult to do that. So that's the position Djokovic. Maybe if it was a bit off, but then Nadal wasn't off. He was on his highest level. So Djokovic is struggling to get through the court and through Nadal's defenses. Nadal's always able to turn it around, and unless Djokovic tries to stop him by going for too much, but then he's risking hitting errors. If not, Nadal's turning it around and getting this sequence one, two, three, four, however many forehands until he breaks through. He has the power, and he's no risk because he's hitting the first forehand like to get a ball a bit shorter, and then you can tack that one a bit more and that one until it ends. And once you get into that pattern, there's no way out. Once Nadal's setting up those forehands. Djokovic has said that's what he tries as far as tactically to say when Nadal hits a whole lot of forehands in a row, you're in trouble. So do anything you got to do. The thing is, you go to the backhand, you can run around the forehand. You can hit a good deep backhand, put you in a defense, and then hit a forehand the next one. So it's a very difficult situation. So Nadal also is always looking to attack and stay ahead and put his opponent down. So Djokovic is playing his consistent rally game. It's not really having an impact on Nadal's defense. Nadal's turning the defense to attack, and then in a 50-50 rally, Nadal's taken over the rally once again, getting in that pattern, one, two, three, forehands. Whenever Djokovic hits the ball hard enough and deep enough to stop him setting up, he's still not getting past the defense. He's still not going anywhere. He has to go for too much and create an error, or go for a little bit less, and then Nadal turns it around, and then you get that forehand pattern. You see what I'm saying? So that was the story of the game. And Djokovic, there's nothing really he can do. Go for too much errors, go for not enough. You never break through the defense, and Nadal turns it around and gets into that multiple forehand pattern until he ends the point. Whenever Nadal's ahead, he can end it. Just those back-to-back forehands, you're on the path until it ends, whereas Djokovic can't. He can't really end it. He can't really get through the court. So Djokovic was in that decision where whatever he does, he's going nowhere. So another thing Nadal did, like when they're on a faster court, Djokovic, what he does is he starts with the first and second serve the point ahead, and then once he's ahead in the rally, he feels like he can finish it off quite well. The Nadal second serve, he attacks that sometimes for a winner, but a lot of the time to start the point ahead. And Nadal's always under pressure to turn it around and to turn defense into offense. It's hard to defend on a faster court too, and it's a very bad situation to be there 75% and always having to turn it around. But this time, what he did was on Djokovic's serve, he's standing at the back fence, right, all the way at that back wall, and forcing Djokovic to try to serve the ball bigger and bigger. Djokovic's serves are not really penetrating the court, so by the time they get through a very slow court, all the way to the back fence near the linesman where Nadal's standing, there's nothing on it. So Nadal can take a full swing of the racket and get it back deep, get it in a 50-50 rally. A lot of these returns are floating deep with top spin. A bit awkward, but they're not going to be a winner. But there's no 1-2 punch. There's no attacking shot after that. The best case, it's a long grinding 50-50 rally. So if he's doing that, almost every service point, you're in a grinding long rally every single time, just to hold serve every time. Like that's a lot of pressure to have these long, grinding, wearing down rallies against Nadal on clay, getting nothing out of your serve, and just have to consistently win them just to be on serve with the guy. And that's what he did. And then, like I said, his defense from Nadal was amazing. The court was slow. Djokovic, from a 50-50 point, he couldn't get through this court. He couldn't get through Nadal's defense. And when he tried to, he had to go for too much to make errors. And if he didn't, again, Nadal's turning defense into offense, getting into the forehand pattern. Nadal's trying to, before we even get to Djokovic's ahead, he won the 1-4 shot rally. So he's trying to, from the very beginning, hit forehands, 1, 2, 3. He has the ability, consistently, no risk with these forehands. You can't really take away his time to set up the forehands and to hit the 1, 2, 3 forehands because the court's so slow. Very hard to get past his defense. Whenever he's in control of the point, he's going to be hitting these forehands without risk. A lot of power on it, top spin, no risk, and every time it's going to make the ball shorter and shorter until he ends the point. He's guaranteed whenever he's ahead, basically, he's going to end the point. He's going to have the power. He's going to get through Djokovic's defense. He's going to have time to set up. But Djokovic is not the same. When he's ahead in the point, he's just not getting through unless he takes a risk and goes for too much and risks an error. So and then you got also that Djokovic's attacking return of serve. I didn't see him getting out of that. So I basically Nadal's just dictating with these forehands unless Djokovic goes for a ridiculous risk. And when you're in a situation in these long rallies where both players are not really getting anything out of the attack, out of the return of serve, and you're in these long grinding rallies, and Nadal has all the time in the world to set up forehands and dictate with the forehand. And even when Djokovic is ahead, he can't really get through unless he takes a ridiculous risk. It was either Nadal dominating the point, bossing Djokovic with the forehand, or Djokovic taking risks and going too far for the line. Sort of that's what we saw in the first couple of sets. Then when we moved to the third set, right, Djokovic said, I've had enough of being bossed around. It's so frustrating. I'm getting nothing out of my serve. Attacking your return of serve, nothing out of that. Just long battles with you controlling with the forehand. If I get sick of it, I go for too much and I make an error, and there's just no way out of this. So what does Djokovic do down 2-0? He's being embarrassed here on the centre court on Philippe Chatrier. What does he do? Well, what he says, he just decides he's going to go harder and harder and harder on the ball. And then if that's not enough, the next point he hit it harder and harder. And then when that's not enough, because he's still not getting through, he's going closer and closer to the line until the point where this whole pattern, where to take Nadal's time away on this court, he has to hit the ball harder, harder, harder. He has to hit the ball closer. He ends up hitting with the maximum power right on the line, almost playing like a Marin Cilic or how Songa used to play, or Burdage, or a lot of these big hitters, Del Potro maybe, but even he's a bit more measured. He has to go for everything right on the line. So he takes these risks, the serve, second serve, go for a first serve on a second, risk a double. Everything's maximum power on the line. And that's the only way he can sort of take Nadal's time away on this slow court. But the thing is, in the third set, this risk pays off. The balls start landing in. He's hitting it flatter. He's hitting as hard. He's hitting on the line. And that extreme high level of them all saying, I'm going to just play like a big hitter. And then I'm going to just hit the ball as hard as I can and pound those lines flat, and just extreme power and extreme risk, right? So when you look at that, he has to come from 2-0, hitting the ball so hard, so flat, so much on the line. But he gets to 5-all by doing that. His risk, he does the Marin Cilic style, like serving big. I'm going to try to blow Nadal off the court, not let him get a rally, not let him have time on this extremely slow clay court. So then that's the situation. But they all land in. So he's playing like a big hitter on grass, trying to do this to Nadal on clay. He gets to 5-all. Nadal's still playing his high level. Nadal still has some time where he can set up and hit forehands. But Djokovic is saying, I'm just going to give it everything right on the line, flat, hard. And if they all drop in for the next 3 sets, I could come back and I could win this thing, right? So that's what's happening. He gets to 5-all, but the problem is this kind of risk from Djokovic is not going to last very long. So, like I said, he's dependent on, just to stay equal now, he needs to hit the ball maximum speed, way harder than he usually hits it, flat right on the line. They all need to land on the line. They all need to be maximum power, and he needs to do that for 3 sets in a row just to keep equal, but he has to win 3 sets in a row. But eventually that high risk every time. And then even those, when he's doing that, the first ball's landing on the line maximum power, Nadal gets it back. The second one, the third one, sometimes the fourth one, and every time just to win 1 point. And every shot is high risk of missing. So Djokovic is doing that, but he gets to 5-all doing that. But the problem is eventually balls are going to start missing. At 5-all, he misses some shots. And a double fault by trying to go for an ace on the second serve, all this risk. Goes down 6-5, and then Nadal serves a couple of big serves, a couple of good shots, ends at 7-5. But really, Djokovic had down 2 sets to love. He really had to play like those big-headed power guys on grass. It just worked for a short time to get to 5-all, but he's not going to hit 3, 4 shots, maximum speed, maximum flatness on the line, and come back from 2 sets to love. But the wrist got him to 5-all, but then, like I said, wrists are not going to last forever, and they didn't at 5-all. That's when going for everything hard and flat, the wrists eventually they're going to miss, and when they did, that's it, 7-5, it's all over. But if he didn't do that when he played his normal game in the first 2 sets, he's just bossed around with the forehand, can't get through Nadal's defense. Nadal has all the time to set up and hit forehands and control it. Every time Nadal's into control, he has no problem, 1, 2, 3 forehands to end it. Djokovic doesn't, nothing out of the serve. Nothing you can do when Nadal's serving that far back on a slow court. So yes, this court took out the topspin, but for Djokovic and hurt Nadal in that. But at what cost? You can't get past Nadal's defense. You can't take his time away. You can't do anything with him standing back there. So basically, that's my analysis, my more in-depth analysis before I move on the GOAT debate. Before I just talk about the history of the tennis and the game and the GOAT debate, I want to go into a few other to the court and the balls, and how we've seen these new court and balls and being slower, and how it advantages Nadal, and what's likely to happen if they play at the May June time with these new balls, because we won't have the colder weather. We'll have the normal weather, but we'll have slower balls. But this year is a double change: colder weather plus slower balls. Right. Next year there'll only be one of the two. The colder weather won't be there, but the slower balls will be. So, firstly, when I just look at this, I'm just saying, like, against everyone other than Thiem, this is a huge advantage. Playing how they played in October, because you can't rush Nadal. You can't do anything if you have a big serve. You can't shorten the points. You can't. He's always has time to set up, to run around, to hit a lot of forehands and get in that pattern. He doesn't need the ball to jump up for topspin, right? There's only one guy that this would advantage against him, and it's hurt because Dominic Thiem is able to play, likes a slow court, is able to play good, consistent rallying and be involved in long rallies as Nadal does. He has just as good speed, or if not, maybe a bit more because he's younger, so a bit harder to hit through in those long rallies than even Nadal is. And then as far as ending the point, and when you have time to set up and hit big shots, he has even more power. So when you're talking about Nadal versus Thiem, Thiem would be in a situation where the speed of Nadal and the defense of Nadal would be a bit better than not quite as fast or as what Thiem speed. So that would give Thiem more of an opportunity to get through Nadal's defense than the other way around, just because he's a bit faster. Then he also has more power when he has that time to set up. His forehand's a little bit bigger. He's developed this big backhand that's also bigger. So, and he doesn't want to be rushed. He wants time to set up, so that advantages him. The negative thing about Clay for him is he likes slow thing, but slow, it means slow plus high bounce. He doesn't like the high bounce because Nadal's got the one-handed, the big forehand with topspin that goes high on the one-handed backhand. So the balls before that were fast, he could get the ball high up on the one-handed backhand, get the short ball, then hit a big forehand and just always get in that pattern. But these new balls and courts, especially when you have a slower ball and a slow court because of the weather, the ball wouldn't get up that much. So the one thing that advantages Nadal over Thiem on clay is the high bounce usually, and that he can exploit the one-handed backhand. But when you slow down the ball, cool down the weather and all of that, Thiem could have actually played him on these clay courts without the ball going high up in his one-hand backhand, without that thing that he can always go to in the matches. So Thiem's the one guy that this high bounce would have disadvantaged Nadal. But luckily that match never happened. We'll never know. But it wouldn't have got. And not in October, not with these slow balls. Nadal would have lost that tactic that he has to go in the rallies. And Thiem would have had more power to hit through great defense in this slow court with all this time to set up. And then he would have had more speed to cover the court to make it hard to end the point for him. So that would have been an interesting matchup, but it never happened. And this whole slowing down of everything Advantages Nadal versus everyone else. The only thing I'll say with Thiem is if he was playing Nadal in these conditions, Nadal's going to force him to hit 3, 4, 5 forehands in a row to end the point. And he's going to have to stand up to that consistency for 5 sets for 5 hours. If he gets frustrated and goes for too much, then the whole thing's going to go wrong. So, yes, he does have the power to hit through this court in Nadal's defense. But the fact that Nadal will force him to go 3, 4, 5, 6 shots every time, can Thiem stand up? We don't know, but we know when Nadal's ahead of the point, he will. You saw him against Djokovic's defense, Schwartzman. He'll be able to hit 3, 5, 7 until he eventually breaks through. Thiem, we don't know. And Thiem will be in a position whenever he's in defense, it'll be over because Nadal will hit all these forehands in a row till it's end without any risk. But when he's in, so then anytime he's behind, he has to face that. Part of the problem beating Nadal at Roland Garros, right? Then the second thing that Thiem would have to deal with is the fact that when he's ahead, yes, he can get through Nadal's defense, but is he willing to go with the consistency, 3, 4, 5, 6 shots every time for 5 hours, plus knowing that he can never get behind because Nadal would just end it and finish it off. So that's what I sort of think about. And then the topspin advantage for Nadal would be gone. So, but as we look to next year, I really think that these balls, like as far as his two main rivals, Thiem and Djokovic, these balls and doing it in May and June would be ideal because before you have cold weather, right? With these balls, you have kind of a medium to highish bounce, and it's a bit sort of slowish. But then if you get a hot day like 80 degrees Fahrenheit or 27 Celsius, so then suddenly Nadal gets the ideal. He can get balls jumping up around your head and neck and maximum on the high bounce, but then it's a fast clay court. Like Madrid, sorry. It's almost playing like a slow hard court, this clay court now. So yes, he's getting maximum bounce, but he gives that speed. Now someone like Djokovic and others can hit through his defense. They can go to his forehand and get the ball through the court, and Nadal doesn't have time to set up. So all the advantages about the time and getting past his defense and the time to set up on the forehand, that's all gone in favor of topspin. So I don't know if just to get that high bounce, if it's worth having a court that fast for Nadal with those old balls. But I think under this situation, like to have these slower balls in October, he gets the ideal court speed for him, but then he loses all the bounce. So it's one positive, but one strong negative. Before, on a hot day, the fast balls and a hot day, then what he's doing is he's getting the perfect situation for bounce, but for court speed, the worst. It's almost like a hard court. So he gives up the court speed advantage. So both of those two extremes, he's gaining in one area and losing in another. But I think with these slow balls, moving to May, June time would be ideal because if it's a hot day, the on a hot day, the balls are going to bounce up high enough to cause someone like Thiem trouble. But you don't give up what you did before, where you say, "I get that ideal bounce, but in order to get that ideal bounce, what do I have to give up?" Um, I have to give up the ball basically playing almost the speed of a hard court to get that. But I say now, whether it's hot or cold, he gets a slow court because these balls are so slow. In any kind of a weather, this will be an extreme slow court. And it's going to be very hard to hit through his defense. It's going to be very hard. And then the balls are changed where it's never going to play like a hard court, regardless of whether that's taken out. But as far as bounce, he won't get the bounce when it's cold. He will when it's hot. So the idea would be when you get the slowest possible court plus the high bounce. And I think with these balls on a hot day, you can achieve that. And I think that that's it. And you're not saying to get that bounce, I need to get the speed of a hard court. So he's going to it's going to be slow all the time, regardless, but it's going to be slow with that high bounce and that ideal combination if you have these balls during hot weather. So I think changing the balls, but playing in the May, June would be the ideal, and having sort of an 80-degree Fahrenheit, 27 Celsius day in the hot sun with these balls. And now knowing that that the court's not going to speed up to be like a hard court. It'll still be very slow, but you get the bounce, not 100% of what you had before, but 80%. So I think he's going to be very hard to beat when he did what he did. He'll still be able to go hard on Thiem's backhand. This year would have been the best time for Thiem, but it didn't happen. So, and then when you add that you only had 3 matches at Rome after a 7-month break, and now he's going to have the full clay court season. And it's always going to be, like I said, these slow advantage. But if it's hot, he'll have the bounce too. And then it'll never get up. The court will probably never even get up to where it was on a cold day speed wise. It'll always be slow. But like I said, on the hot day you get the bounce, the cool day you don't. Whereas before you get the bounce regardless, but you have ridiculously high bounce. With the heat, but then you lose the slowness. It's not playing like a clay court speed, but now you're going to get all that, and the bounce will depend on the weather. In May, June, it's up and down. But I think hot day with these balls, Nadal's going to be. This is just the ideal that he could ever want. A lot of people would have thought, well, this is a problem for Nadal changing the balls, but like I said, the slowness he gets regardless of weather, but then you can also have the slowness with the high bounce on a hot day, and never have a clay court that's bordering on a hard court. This contract with Wilson, the new balls, is 5 years. So when you couple that with Nadal playing a proper clay court season next year, and how the difference these balls will play with the same ball, same court, but hotter weather, next year could be really ideal for Nadal. You could see him winning it again, and Djokovic will still not be able to hit through the court, even now with heat. And if you're playing in heat, at least the ball will be able to get high enough to bother Thiem's one-handed backing. So that's all I'll say about the conditions and the final. Now let's end this and let's get in the GOAT debate and what is like really important, what I noticed. Firstly, what I want to say is this: Federer has 20 Grand Slams, Nadal 20, and Djokovic 17. Okay. So what I want to talk about is, I want to say this, right? When you look at the value of these Grand Slams, Federer got 12 in the Roddick, Hewitt, Davydenko area. That doesn't mean anything. Like Roddick, Hewitt, Davydenko, like anyone who's even decent would just dominate those guys. So he basically got to say, I get to have 12 Grand Slams by beating guys who would never in a million years win a Grand Slam. They're not even near Thiem or Medvedev. So he's a good player. Of course, Federer is better than those players, and that's all he proved, that he's better than them. So he got 12, and then he gets 8, and then he gets 8 Grand Slams. When he's playing, against the other guys in the big three. So yeah, when you're getting older, that's a good achievement. I'll give him that. But when you look at Djokovic now, 17 Grand Slams, all of it has been with going through the big three era. So I think the 17 that Djokovic has are more worth than the 20, and a better achievement and a harder one. So 17, and say I got all 17 in the Federer, Nadal, Djokovic era. Those Federer and Nadal were already dominating him. He had to come in and win 17 in their era. Amazing achievement for Djokovic. I'll give him that. But then Nadal, let's look at what he did to get to the 20. When he was 20 years old, Federer was 25 in his peak. Now everybody says, even now late in his career, Djokovic, even though he's 11 months younger, he's younger and less prone to injury and all of that. So he had to go through this whole Federer, Nadal, Djokovic and get all 20, not even 17. So you'd think you need to be good plus have a bit of luck. Federer's had that to get to 20. Djokovic hasn't had no luck and got to 17 and would be way over 20 if he got to play in Federer's time. So to get 17 into this big ball in this big free era, it's a very big achievement. Now let's look at Nadal. Same. He's got all 20 in this big free era. So he's been able to do even more than what Djokovic did, having 1 extra year, but getting 3 more. Plus, he's been injured. So if Nadal was not injured, even playing in this big free era, how many slams would Nadal have? He'd have 25, just based on if he had the same health of Djokovic and Nadal, Djokovic and Federer. So To get to 20 is a monumental achievement when we're talking about the greatest ever. Now let's look at another thing, the court surface, right? They try to make it seem like Nadal is a clay courter. As we look at it, no, that's not true at all. Like, imagine 13 Grand Slams on clay, but 7 on a surface that doesn't suit you, grass or hard court. He's even got at least 2 slams on every surface, 2 Wimbledon, so 2 on grass, 1 Australian Open and 4 US Open, 5 on a hard court. Hard court and grass are very similar now. Most players like Sampras, for example, got 14 all on grass and hard court, could never transition to clay. Most clay courters like Quirden, people like that, they could never win on grass and hard court. That's the big step. And to say like you're an all court player like Sampras because you won Grand Slams on grass or a hard court. No, the challenge is moving from clay to grass or hard court or the other way around. He couldn't do it. What about Federer and Djokovic? Okay, Djokovic 16 of the 17 on grass and a hard court. Okay, yeah, that's good. But the problem is getting all of yours on a surface, 2 surfaces that are basically the same. For me, it's like if Nadal won all of his on green clay and red clay, you know? But when you're asked to make that big change to clay, he only has 1. So, it's not really an adaptable all-surface type of player. But you look at Nadal, he's been able to make that crossover and get 7 on grass and hard court. And he's even got, if you look at, and even though grass and hard court are similar, if you look at them as 3 individual surfaces, he's able to get 2 on grass and 5 on a hard court, right? So who else has been able to do that? Get at least 2 Grand Slams. And to me, that shows he's the most adaptable of the free surfaces. To say I've been able to go to all surfaces and get 2 slams on that surface. Sampras never did it. He got none on clay. Federer's only got 1 on clay. Djokovic has got 1 on clay. But yet Nadal's been able to get 5 on a hard court, 2 on a grass. So this whole thing about him being a clay courter is nonsense. Because if you want to focus on that, then why are you not saying that Djokovic and Federer are only having 1 Grand Slam on a clay court? They should lose points on that. When Nadal's got 2 slams on every surface. So if you say Nadal's worst is grass, he gets 1 shot a year at that, like you get at the French Open. Yet he's got 2 on grass and you've got 1 on clay. So he's adapted better than you. Plus, the whole, like I said, hard court and grass. So you can't. So this whole situation about people who call all court players and win on hard court and grass, but not clay, they're not all court players because that's like winning on red clay and green clay. So that's what I want to say about that. So do you get what I'm trying to say here? That like they can't say that all the free. Once you move to clay, they said, no, I've only done it once, 1 time, Whereas Nadal said, I've been able to go to grass once and come back again. You can't do that on clay. So when you put you on your worst surface and me, I get 2, you haven't. And also, like I said, the hard court and the grass are both very different to clay, and players have trouble to go between them. So the 2 surfaces that are similar and very different than clay, he's got 5 on one surface, 2 on the other. Whereas when they make the change out of 2, they adapt between 2 surfaces that are almost the same, but when you ask them to go to one that's very different, they're getting 1. Whereas Nadal's getting 7 and even 2 on grass. So he's the best all-court player. Yeah, he's the best all-court player in the history of the game, and he's the best on his own surface. No one's ever dominated a surface the way he has. So I think this is indisputable. Sampras couldn't even do it. Djokovic got 1 on clay. Federer got 1 on clay. So all these other competitors moving between clay to grass and hard and vice versa, they've only done it once. He's done it 7 times moving across and even twice on the grass. Plus you're dominating your best surface. But the problem is when you have 1 Grand Slam on a surface that suits you, to have the most Grand Slams, you need to win that basically 100% of the time because you're not going to win a whole lot on a surface that doesn't suit you. He's done that. And then you have to win quite a sizable number on the others. You can't just do what Djokovic and Federer said, well, I'll win 1 and then that's it. And even if I win one, you just take one away. Like Djokovic would still have 15, Federer 19. Doesn't matter. I don't need to do well there because I've got 3 Grand Slams on a surface that suit me. So firstly, you don't need to really win on clay. And then the grass and hard court, you don't need to be as good as Nadal is on clay on the surface that suits you. You don't need to dominate like that because you're saying, well, even if I lose one, it's not like there's one French Open here that's free. So I'm getting 3 a year. I can just get half of them or one in every 3. But whereas Nadal can't do that. There's a limit you'll win on a surface that doesn't suit you. So because he's got one a year, has to win 100% on clay. Plus, he has to win a sizable number on the others. They don't have to win on clay, and they don't even need to win 50% of them on the surface that suits you. This whole system is set up to make sure clay quarters will never do it. But Nadal, even under that disadvantage, he's tied with Federer of 20. He's had another disadvantage about the injuries. Still, he's at 25 years younger and will win more Grand Slams than Federer. So, I mean, and then the injuries is another thing. And then getting all 20 Grand Slams in the Big Three era. Like, if you compare to previous generations, 20 for Federer, 20 for Nadal, 17 for Djokovic, these guys are only where they are because they're all playing at one time. If you remove one of those 3, 2 of them would be up to 25. If you remove 2 of them, any of these 3 guys would be up to 30. Look at the amount of finals they've lost. So when you're talking about past generations, right? These guys should have more Grand Slams than they have. Should be at 25 or 30, and all 3 of them are only where they are because they're playing at the same generation. Their numbers are on the lowest end of the spectrum they could possibly be because they're all playing at the same era. But yet they're still all the 3 the most. And the lowest of the 3 is still 3 Grand Slams more than Sampras, anyone else, and that guy never even won on all the surfaces. So it's clear that these 3 are the best, and I've explained why Nadal is the best and why Federer 20 Grand Slams. He didn't have to do that. He said, I'll get up to 12 before this tough era starts. But Djokovic and Nadal got 17 and 20 all in this tough era. And then, like I said, but Djokovic is getting 3 of the 4 Grand Slams on a surface that suits him. Nadal's getting 1, and Nadal's missing, like, it's been about 10 to 12 Grand Slams due to health. So Nadal's miles ahead. If you had like the equal health, Nadal would be up at 25 and the other guys would be even less, right? So that's if you change the health. If you would compare Nadal and Djokovic based on have a real comparison on surface, and you said, okay, if we had 2 Grand Slams on a hard court, 2 on clay, how is that not fair? 2 guys, they prefer 2 different surfaces. You give them 2 slams on each surface, right? So Djokovic would be about 10 to 12 Grand Slams behind because he needs this advantage of having 3 slams on a surface that suits him. It's only interesting because Nadal only gets 1 on a surface that suits him and Djokovic gets 3. It would just be like Serena Williams domination. If you compare Nadal and Federer, they're already equal, and Federer gets 3 slams on a surface that suits him. Plus, he got to win 12 in a non-competitive era. But just forget the era. If you had 2 Grand Slams on grass, 2 on clay, again, that's 2 on each surface that suits both players. That's fair. Again, it wouldn't even be close, even with Nadal's injuries. But when you take out the surface, the injuries, look, I think that this is not even close. For me, Nadal is clearly number 1. Djokovic is clearly number 2 in the history of the game. And it's a tough fight between Federer and Pete Sampras, probably equal third. If anything, I'm going to give it to probably Federer's third, just that he's got those 8 Grand Slams in this era. He won once on clay and made all those finals, losing to Nadal, and really Sampras could make even a final. Got to 1 semi-final. So based on that, I'll give Sampras 4, Federer's at 3rd, in Djokovic is at 2nd, Nadal's at 1. We might have a different if Djokovic catches up on the Grand Slams. I said in the last video, the head-to-head, Djokovic is 2 up on Nadal, but Nadal's 10-6 ahead in Grand Slams, so that equals it out. Masters 1,000. Nadal had more at the start of the year. Now Djokovic has one more. What if Nadal plays Paris or something? Or what if he gets a whole lot in the clay court season next year? So that's equal going back and forth. Nadal's 3 ahead in the Grand Slams. That's where it's decided. We're getting nothing from head-to-head at Masters 1,000, but Federer and Nadal, 20 Grand Slams each. 24-16 for Nadal on the head-to-head. And 7 more Masters 1,000 for Nadal. So I'm not giving anything to anyone this week's at number 1. I'm not giving you credit because you won 500 and 250s. I've just went over statistics of Grand Slam Masters 1,000. I mean, if you add the World Tour finals, the top 8, Federer, for Nadal, you're playing on the worst surface for him, indoors. You're playing at the end of the year when his body's broken down, the highest level competition all the time. Like, that doesn't suit him at all. What about if you played it in May or June on clay, the top 8? You know what I'm saying? So it's like saying we're only going to look at Roland Garros. Forget about everything else. And then we're going to determine the GOAT debate there. 13 for Nadal, 1 for Federer, 1 for Djokovic. It's like the same if you're looking at the World Tour finals. Nadal would rather best of 3, would rather clay. But I'm telling you, I do give them credit. It is a tough tournament. It is the top 8. And they've won it more than Nadal, so I give them credit. But it's not enough to overcount for the fact that Nadal is equaling Grand Slams with a guy who's 5 years younger. He's achieved that at 34. Federer got his 20th at 36. Federer was at 17 Grand Slams at Nadal's age. Djokovic is at 17. Nadal's at 20 at sort of the same age. It's not enough to account for the fact that Masters 1,000 head-to-head, Djokovic and Nadal are basically equal, but Nadal has 3 more slams and the injuries and the service disadvantage. It's not enough for Djokovic to have a claim until we even get equal on the Grand Slams. And with Federer, like I said, like the easy generation, his advantage on health, his advantage having 3 of the 4 slams on the surface, but still not getting any more Grand Slams, less Masters 1,000, losing the head-to-head. I don't think so for Federer. So that's just basically what I wanted to get into here today. And I hope you guys have a wonderful day and night. Look out for more videos. I'm going to go over some sort of waiting for this announcement if Nadal will play the rest of the year. Djokovic has announced he's going to be in Vienna. He's going to not play Paris. He's playing the World Tour finals. Federer is definitely coming back for the Australian Open to start the new year. Nadal will be there, but we don't know about Nadal for the rest of the year. He's definitely said he's not playing Vienna, so it's Paris and London to end the year, best case scenario. I say probably he shouldn't play, because if you just have a whole 10 months to relax your body for the future, and then you only played 10 matches in that time at Rome in the French Open, all straight sets matches, all on clay, the easiest surface of the body, really, you're coming in starting next year saying I've played 10 matches in 10 months, all on clay that's easy on the body, haven't been on a hard court for 10 months. It's going to really extend your career. He's been able to do what Federer's done, basically like equivalent to having a year off to refresh your body for a longer future. But the difference is Federer did that and lost a year of age on his career and got no Grand Slams credited to him. So he gave up that to get the longer future, but Nadal gets a longer future, but still gets his French Open anyway. So for me, that would be ideal, but we just don't know what's going to happen with that. But we know Federer won't be there and Djokovic will be at Vienna in the World Tour finals in London, not in Paris. And the only thing for Nadal that's in play is Paris and London. So subscribe, have a wonderful day, night, wherever you are in the world. Give me the thumbs up, the bell notification so we can have more videos. I'm really gonna speak to Roger as he gets closer to his comeback in January. We're gonna go live to Basel in Switzerland for that one. I'm also going to be at the Australian Open, assuming they allow spectators. So I'm going to do live video. I'm going to try to talk to players from there and get their opinion and just stop whoever I can. And like I'll go to any lengths to create a good program, you know, even if it's about, walking around the streets of Melbourne and perhaps even having a conversation with the players on the street or restaurants or wherever it is. I'll be seeking the players, I'll be seeking interviews, and I'll be involved in the Australian Open. I want to let you know that for January. And then we've got a lot to look forward to. I'm definitely going to be going over the Vienna tournament the last week of October, Paris Masters 1,000, first week of November, the World Tour Finals from the 15th of November to the 22nd, and then the whole Australian season, probably the ATP Cup, equivalent to the Davis Cup by the ATP, and then the Australian Open. And then we'll sort of move in next year and we'll do Indian Wells and Miami, the Clay, the Grand Slams. I also want to give you some news, some Wimbledon news and Australian Open news. They're saying that if they can get no cases of this virus for 28 days in Melbourne, they'll be at full capacity. So right now they're down to 1 or 2 cases every day from 700. So it's still quite a way. They could do that. If not, if it's low case numbers, they'll be at 25 to 50% capacity. So that's what the Australian Open is doing. Wimbledon has an announcement too. They said next year they're holding it regardless. And they'll either do it with full fans, partial fans, or even if they're forced to no fans, it'll be on with no fans. So basically, unless the British government says Wimbledon can't even hold it with no fans, we're really looking at 4 Grand Slams next year, and we're really looking at the prospect of the fact that this virus will only take 1 Grand Slam from the history of tennis. That's 2020 Wimbledon. So we're just looking at that because we got through. Like the biggest challenge I felt was like the Australian Open happened before the virus. The 3 Grand Slams you have in the middle of the year, which we got 2 of the 3 in. That's the biggest challenge because next year, the next Grand Slam, we only have 1 Grand Slam between now and the middle of 2021. That's in Australia, a place where there's 1 to 2 cases a day going to 0. So saying that the virus won't really affect Australia, if that's the case, which it looks to be, then we don't need to worry about Europe and the US until middle of the year, and that gives them a lot of time to fix this situation up. But it's already fixed up in Australia, so we can be confident about the only Grand Slam between now and the middle of the year, and having all this time to fix the situation up by the middle of next year. So we're looking at 4 Grand Slams next year. I'll definitely be at the Australian Open. I'm going to try to get to some of the others. I would like to get to all 4 and do something there. So yeah, it looks like that's how the year's going to be. It looks like Wimbledon's committed. I'm sure the French Open and the US Open, if they did under these conditions, they'll do it. It would be good if by middle of next year it would be better. And the only Grand Slam before the middle of next year is in January in a place that's barely got any virus cases at all. So the only issue, they need to quarantine the players, and they need it to be a hub where the players can actually train and hit balls, and not be just stuck in a hotel. So the Australian Open is negotiating that. The Australian government, last hurdle, because like I said, the virus isn't really an issue in Australia. So that's it. And yeah, I've actually been to all the 4 Grand Slams. So when I talk, I have experience there. I've been to the French Open twice, Wimbledon twice, US Open about 5 times. Once I went to all 14, and I've been to the Australian Open 5 times. So I can really talk from experience about what it's like to be there. But I want to try to get to all 4 in 2021 too. So yeah, but I just really think that the biggest thing in the future of tennis is the Federer's not going to win this Grand Slam race, but can Djokovic and Nadal? Uh, the last thing, sorry, I missed this point on the GOAT debate, right? I want to clear this up. This whole view that Djokovic is going to win everything and catch everyone, it came from the fact that Federer and Nadal were doing poorly in 2015 and 16. Nadal was reaching 30 years old, so the idea was Nadal was done. Djokovic is younger. Nadal's going to have physical problems, so he's not going to win past 30, and he stopped winning for 2 years. So that was the idea that everybody said, well, Nadal's finished, Federer's 5 years older, Djokovic is just going to win everything. And that school of thought with a lot of commentators, it's still there. But people need to realize, since the start of 2017, it's a different trend. Nadal's actually won the most Grand Slams over 30, so no one could have been more wrong. And Djokovic has not catched up. At the end of 2016, he was 2 slams behind, right? Look, Nadal gets 2 Grand Slams. He gets 0 in 2017. Djokovic gets 2. Nadal gets 1 in 2018. 2019, they get 2 each. And 2020, they get 1 each. So there's no trend. He's catching up. So that's an old school of thought based on 2015, 2016. He's not catching up, but something would have to change from the current trend. And it doesn't look like it at all. But you never know what's going to happen in this game in the future. So I think that's the most interesting thing going forward. And I think Federer's lost the head-to-head to both of them. He won't win the Grand Slam race, and he's out of the GOAT debate. That's the way I see it. Unless somehow Djokovic can't get to sort of maybe 21, he gets to 20 or less, then Nadal gets a career-ending injury, so he can't win anymore. And then somehow Federer picks up another Wimbledon and gets to 21, then he'll be in the debate. But barring that situation, Federer's out of the debate. And I said in my last video, Djokovic must win the Australian Open, because if not, Nadal will win the French and go to 21. But if Nadal wins the Australian, he could all the way be at 22 and the first player to win all 4 twice. So really, that's the way I see everything, here. And again, once again, sorry about that. Thumbs up, bell notification, subscribe. Have a great day and night, and enjoy everything. And I'll be with you soon with all the things that I've mentioned. Bye for now. Bye then.